Good evening, everyone. This is Radio Free Mormon. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast with co-hosts Bill Reel and Rebecca Biblioteca. Good evening, you two.
How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
An underwhelming response, but we'll let it go at that. We've got some great stories here tonight. But first, at the very top, we have some announcements to make. And first among those is there is a 20th anniversary celebration going on across the country, yay, across the world, because it's the 20th anniversary of Mormon Stories. I think that was just a few days ago. This is the first newscast we've had since the Blessed event. And I was talking to John DeLynn on the phone just before the show. Wanted to thank him for everything he's done in my life and in the lives of so many. Anyway, if you have any comments about that, you too, about this announcement, it's just amazing. He said, 20 years, where has the time gone? He asked me, how long have you been doing this RFM? I said, well, in October, 9 years. And he goes, geez. Yeah, it goes fast. It'll continue to go faster for John, I predict.
John was the first space that gave me permission to question out loud. And so for 2 decades of content that has helped us all feel safer talking out loud about our Mormon stories, kudos to him for all the work that he's done.
Yep. John and Mormon Stories and the whole crew, they are just amazing. And it's interesting because I am friends with the first sound tech engineer that they used, way back 20 years ago when it was all low budget. And I remember this person talking to me and going, yeah, I'm doing this thing. I'm kind of helping. And I was like, what is that? Early days, I had no idea, but yeah, very meaningful to a lot of people. And I would say has saved some lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was talking to him not only about, definitely on the saving the lives. Absolutely. Yep. But I was talking to him about that and also just letting him know and getting his okay that everything's on the thumbs up with us using a clip from a recent Mormon story show. That'll be my second story tonight. If we can go over here too. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was trying to do that. You go ahead and Bill.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you so much. The lead story is Wall Street Journal clashes with the Mormon Church. The next story is, by the way, I think I'll be taking that story. I hope so. I did a bunch of slides, though some of them mysteriously disappeared this afternoon. Rebecca Biblioteca was the last person seen.
Do not look at me. It was not me. I was too busy reading my new book. Somebody gave me a copy of this. I've never
Visions
actually read
of Glory.
it. I know.
You got the Visions of Glory book?
Yeah, actually, Ganesh Sharian gave it to me. He found it at DI.
Oh my gosh, maybe now your kids will finally get what they deserve.
Maybe.
All right, the second story. Painful divide between Latter-day Saints and those who leave. Is that your story, Bill?
It is my story, my friend.
Great. Temple updates and garment rationing. Not sure whose story that would be. Rebecca?
No idea. Probably me.
Then the new abuse hotline scandal. I'll be covering that, and that's where we have the clip from Mormon Stories. And finally, a response from Salt Lake City to Lesotho tragedy and Time Magazine's coverage of President Nelson. All right. Well, we've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's go. This was a story that came out, I think it was on the 2nd of September in the Wall Street Journal of all places. Headline, Exmo influencers mount a TikTok war against the Mormon Church. The church is facing a 21st century reckoning driven by social media, and it is racing to counter the narrative. This was written by Georgia Wells. Yes, in 9225. The piece begins with the story of Madeline Woodward, who was once a faithful Mormon, but having trouble with some of the issues in church history, such as Joseph Smith's practice of polygamy, as well as the LDS Church's current anti-gay position. That seems like an incomplete sentence to me. Sorry, folks. But this is what happened. Madeline discovered on social media that she wasn't alone, that others shared her concerns, and that Mormons could actually be happy after leaving the church. Madeline left the church and had her name removed from church records. So this starts with a story about Madeline, which is emblematic of a lot of other Madelines who are doing the same stuff all over the church. Several ex-Mormons said their social media videos went viral when they started posting them in 2020. That year, creators noticed the hashtag ex-Mormon had received a total of more than 200 million views on TikTok. and was increasing by about 1 million views a day. TikTok no longer displays the number of views a hashtag has received. And so there we've got some pictures. We've got Lex. We've got Alyssa Grenfell there in her temple regalia. And then we've got a really nice picture of John DeLynn. I like that picture. Okay. The church's fight for relevance on social media comes as it battles a broader membership crisis. After decades of expanding its American base by 4% a year, official church rolls are now growing less than 1% annually in the U.S. Globally, church growth is bolstered by converts abroad, especially in Africa. So these, I suspect, are closer to being the accurate facts than the church's recent pronouncements that it is growing like never before. The portion of people in the U.S. who identify as Mormon has almost halved from the 1.8% they represented in 2012. According to the Cooperative Election Study, a survey of more than 50,000 Americans, Justin Turman, a former member who conducts Justin Turman, a former member who conducts church attendance surveys, has found that approximately 21% of the 17.5 million official members worldwide are actively involved in the church.
Can I just stop us for just a second there? This is different because we've all estimated somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 35% of people on the rolls are actively engaged in Mormonism. And what he's saying is that his surveys, which again, 50,000 people, is saying that it's a lot less folks that are on the rolls who are actually actively engaged. That's a big difference from what we thought it was.
What I was raised to understand it was back in the 70s and 80s was basically 50% activity rate is what the church boasted. And I don't know what it was then, but they sure boasted about it. But then we started thinking it was a third, and then we find out it's not a third, it's not even a fourth, it's a fifth of the total claimed membership are active. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Exactly. I will say that this figure tracks with returnandreport.org, right? Where people submit their own reports, counting in their own wards. It hovers around 21%. And this also tracks with that Pope study of cell phone data, right? Where they ping the phones and they can see who is in the building. So I don't know. There's a lot of corroboration here with that number, whether people want to hear that or not.
It is hard to square all this information with the claims that the church is growing in an unprecedented pace. To counter the hashtag Exmo narratives, teams of employees, pastoral officials, like GAs, at its Utah headquarters and even a paid ad agency are organizing a slate of pro-church influencers. They highlight positive perspectives on the Book of Mormon and encourage viewers to meet with missionaries. Now, I've got to tell you, this one with the Ward Radio guys, that's my favorite at the bottom of the left. I did not tweak that at all. That is how they put it up there. It says, stop listening to intellectuals. Cardinal is doing his best impression of Mo Howard. And I can't believe that somebody would put this up here and think that it makes them look good. No, we're not going to listen to those smart people.
Is that
we're going to point fingers at them and make faces.
Is that David Alexander over on the right side?
It is. I included David Alexander. Yes. And did you want to say anything about David? He finally got married.
You guys mean David DeRouche, don't you?
We do.
Yes.
We do, of course.
Yes. Yellow Taxi. Paved Paradise put up a parking lot. Wait, it's not the Yellow Taxi. It's the Yellow
Deli cult, also known as the 12 tribes. That's right.
Yes. So, and then there's there's David Mock Schnell, there on the right, in the middle, and on the right of that thumbnail. And we've also got the who are those guys? The stick of Joseph.
The brothers.
Yes. The two sticks of Joseph. And then we have this fellow up here with Tao Tai. I think he goes by Brother or Mr. TikTok or something. And I hadn't seen him before. He talks about Mormon culture. And then, of course, there is Ms. Rapley, Jasmine, without the E. Jasmine Rapley. And so they have in this piece featured Jasmine, this guy Tao Tai, and David Schnell. So they have at least 3 voices favorable to the church that are among the apologists who are trying to battle the minions of darkness, represented in this article.
Did they mention Jacob Hansen at all?
No, they did not.
Okay.
No, they did not. In fact, I think that the church was asked if they knew Jacob Hansen. They said, "We've never met the guy. We don't know who you're talking about." Back to the story, though. Leaders increasingly post short form video content. This is the leaders, the GAs. Increasingly post. A lot of them are doing that, posting themselves. Short form video content on the church's social media accounts, featuring a variety of members and faith stories and Mormon apostles. It has also encouraged its tens of thousands of missionaries to post pro-church content. So they're trying to flood the end zone here, right? Flood the zone. So here's something where you got some missionaries who are singing and some kind of song. And down here, there's a missionary with what I'm guessing is an investigator or a convert who's much smaller and darker than he. And then over here, we've got some young lady, young person, dare to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So it's like a challenge, right? It's a challenge. We're throwing down the gauntlet now. Dare to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Is that a challenge, Scar? And then on the other side of the coin, the church has pressured a number of prominent influencers in recent years to stop producing content critical of the church, stripping some of their membership and prompting others to resign before they could be excommunicated. So over here with Latter-day Struggles, and I can't even, it's Nathan and it's Valerie. It's Haymaker. Yeah. Yeah, they got pressured and then they resigned. And there's this bloke, Nemo, up here. I think he got excommunicated. Then over here, there's Michelle Stone. We did a newscast about her getting deleted by the LDS church, and she agreed to be deleted rather than be excommunicated. And this is a real nice picture of you, Bill. I found this on the internet. I wanted to use this picture because you kind of got pressured, but you would not bend.
Yeah, like the other folks, you get asked to stop doing the thing that is pointing to the problems out loud, or they will take the next step. And with me, they also took the next step.
Okay. So, response to the Wall Street Journal article has been predictable, with Mormons focusing their criticism on the photo of Alyssa Grenfell in her temple robes. This photo was in the online article only and was not reproduced in the print version, possibly because of this reaction. Even Utah Senator Mike Lee got into the act. And here's what he posted. I'm confident Wall Street Journal would never run a hit piece on the Catholic Church featuring a photo of defiant ex-Catholics desecrating the Eucharist, he said. He added that he was stunned and disappointed that the Journal had done essentially that to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Hashtag not cool, WSJ, he wrote. So that is the end of this story for now. Any thoughts by any of you?
I have to say that I read through, let's see, the last time I looked at it, there were 2,200 comments. That was a couple days ago. So I'm sure there are even more. And, a lot of them were, how dare you print these, untruths, and I'm canceling my subscription. It was very interesting to kind of see the comments roll in. And I will note that on the first day that it came out online first, it was number 3. Like, it was the top, it was right there, number 3 story. Everybody was reading it. The next day it came out in print, front page, the lower portion of the front page, but still on the front page. And it was still number 4 online. So a lot of interest, a lot of people looking at this, and, the comments, they just raced in to say that none of this was accurate. And then of course there were other people that raced in and said, no, a lot of it is accurate. So if you have a chance, go through all those thousands of comments. It really is kind of a little world of its own.
if the LDS Church gets to work behind the scenes to get positive coverage of it working with the NAACP, to act as though it is race friendly and all of its racist issues are behind it, then I think it's fair game that there be media coverage out there that also cover those who have been hurt by, feel deceived by the LDS Church, who have had relationships hurt, and be able to point out the things that they think are troublesome with Mormonism.
I think that's a great point. I will tell you that there's been a lot of responsive videos from the usual suspects, the ones who defend the church, and it was entirely predictable. I talked about this with John Dehlin as well. It was entirely predictable what the response would be, and that they would focus on the temple clothing in the photograph. And so as I was thinking about this and talking about it with John, I was saying, that was a critical mistake to make. Okay. Because when you're making an argument, you don't do something where you easily allow your opponent, and obviously will allow your opponent, to focus all their attention on this other thing and castigate you for it while ignoring the real issue. But then I stopped and I said, well, but then again, I guess the Wall Street Journal isn't really part of this debate. They're running a newspaper.
Right. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, and people who aren't familiar exactly with what happens in the temple, that picture definitely piques some interest. Might go to work the next day and ask their LDS coworker, I saw this picture. What is that? I mean, if you want to encapsulate it all in a picture, that picture was it.
Yeah. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, that picture was worth 1,000,000.
Yep.
By the way, I've got something here. Let me do over here. Okay. Under my eye, either I've got a little mouse there under my eye, or I screwed up the eyeliner again, and I'm not sure which, but I'm out of cold cream, so I can't clean it off if that's the problem. And I don't have any base to put over it, so it will, look like it's not there.
It kind of looks like you got decked. Did you get?
I absolutely did. I got totally plastered with that one. That was a haymaker.
I believe.
No, I'm not exactly sure how it happened. I just noticed it, and then I tried to clean it and made it worse, as it usually happens with me. So we have another story about Time Magazine, another big publication, running a story about President Nelson. Now, how wrong of an introduction is that?
Well, that's perfect. Let's go to the slides. And I think I even wrote on the slide, speaking of periodicals, right? It was kind of a week for the LDS Church to be in the news. Now, the Wall Street Journal, that was an article written by a reporter, right? Who interviewed people, did research, and then put out an article about the LDS Church. I've heard from a lot of people, have you seen the article about President Nelson? They put an article in Time about President Nelson. Just to be clear, it was not an article written by a reporter. If you read it, it's an opinion piece, right? And the Church News is very clear about that. It says op-ed, submitted by President Nelson and published. But some of the other newspaper articles, like the Deseret News and stuff, they just say things like, in Time, President Nelson says. So I can understand why people would think, that someone had done an article on President Nelson. But no, this is President Nelson submitting an opinion piece with his 101 years of wisdom, and the Time Magazine printing it. So, I mean,
does it actually start with the word first?
It does.
There's not an introductory paragraph?
No, you know what? I don't know. I took this frame from somewhere, so no.
Okay.
But then again, oh no, you know what? I added that to it because I wanted to highlight something. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
That would be strange, wouldn't it?
It would be an odd way to start first.
Exactly. No, the whole article, sorry, here I am calling it an article. The whole op-ed is about being inclusive and being a peacemaker and building bridges with communities. We'll get into this later. But the one thing I wanted to point out is that, look here, he says in the opinion piece, a loving Heavenly Father. Okay, that stood out to me because I thought, doesn't President Nelson often talk about our heavenly parents? So I kind of did a deep dive this morning, and I found a whole bunch of times for the last 30 years that he's been talking about our heavenly parents. We're beloved children of heavenly parents. And in fact, if you remember the old Young Women's theme, it used to say you're a beloved daughter of a heavenly father. He, once he became prophet, okayed if not suggested, I don't know for sure, that they change it to your beloved daughter of heavenly parents. So my question is kind of, why is he so comfortable everywhere using heavenly parents, yet here in Time magazine, he reverts to Heavenly Father? I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, because we're trying to fool the public.
Ah, there it
What a
is.
There's a smile on my face.
What a great moment to proclaim Mormon doctrine. What a great moment to tell the world
Yep.
you are unique and special, and
Yep.
you have further light and knowledge that has not been revealed to the rest of the world, but with which you and your members know about.
Yep, that's what I thought. A missed opportunity to share our extremely unique doctrine. And imagine if he would have said heavenly parents, that would be the story. That would have blown up all over the place. But instead, he kind of reverted back to Heavenly Father. So I don't know what to make of it.
He's never quite gotten back to that level of faith he had the first time he ordered that worldwide fast to turn back COVID. I think his faith's gone downhill ever since then.
Yeah, possibly. Anyway, it's an interesting read because it was written by President Nelson himself. And again, it details how to be a peacemaker and how to be a good neighbor. And that's all I have on that. Time magazine.
Great. Thank you so much for that story, Rebecca. I think the next story is going to be from Bill Reel.
All right. So what we've got here is, this was actually in the news 2 weeks ago. We didn't do a show for Monday on Labor Day, and I had told you guys then that I wanted to cover this. I think this is a big deal. This is the Salt Lake Tribune exploring the nastiest divide of all in Utah: Latter-day Saints versus former members. In the Salt Lake Tribune's recent Unspoken Divide series, nearly 1,400 Utahns, and this goes right along with the story you just shared, RFM, 1,400 Utahns responded to how the divide between current Latter-day Saints and former members has rattled their lives. 539 self-identified as Latter-day Saints, 575 as former members, and 239 as somewhere in between. I think that's telling as well, that there's a bunch of people in the middle. The responses are drenched in raw emotion. Many used words like deep sorrow, lonely, ignored, or even, quote, slap in the face, unquote. One Latter-day Saint in West Valley City lamented, when they, meaning the loved ones, left, it created feelings of deep sorrow. Another person said, what they believe doesn't matter to our relationship, for another respondent in Logan, Utah. What they believe doesn't matter to our relationship. That's what we all want to hear, whether someone stays or whether someone goes. We want to know that that beliefs in a particular small minority religion doesn't matter for the relationships that we hold to be dear. The emotional chasm isn't just poetic, it's documented by religion scholar Patrick Mason, who you'll recognize there in the image, of Utah State University, who notes the dynamic is more loaded than a Hallmark breakup. And the article referred to the tension between those who stay and those who leave as similar to a divorce. Quote, former members often see, and I'm going to get rid of the comments there, often see Latter-day Saints as agents of harm, or at least complicit in a system of harm. That's Patrick Mason. While, quote, the traitor is always worse than the enemy, he observes. So he's noting that tension between those who stay and those who leave, and how each side sees the other. Some of the pain comes from institutions like BYU, where losing one's faith can mean losing more than Sunday attendance. It can cost your place at school. Utah historian W. Paul Reeve, sorry, I don't know why it says it there twice, but Paul Reeve, and I'll just note, he is, I think it's fair to say, the main contributor on the gospel topic essay on race in the priesthood. And he's the one who's behind the majority of scholarship that went into that. And at university where he teaches, he said this about his classes. He said, quote, if you took this class because you thought, I should go back up, sorry. Utah historian Paul Reeve says he tells students the first day that he, quote, won't tolerate anyone denigrating anyone else's beliefs or non-beliefs, unquote. Quote, if you took this class because you thought it's the you, so it's a chance to grind an axe against the church, find a different class, unquote. He also declared, quote, "Or if you took this class and thought you would be in Sunday school, the chance to bear your testimony and save the heathens, find a different class," unquote. These ground rules, Reeves says, prove crucial to a healthy learning environment. The human stories are heartbreaking. Pamela Bloom, a West Jordan City Council member who left the church in 2010 after growing up deep in the church, her words, not mine. Her grandfather even sang in the tabernacle choir, shares that she, quote, "lost everything, my faith, my family, my community," and says it took time to recover from that, unquote. It reads like a dramatic memoir, but it's just Tuesday in the faith transition trenches. Small gestures help, but so often they're absent. Now, this was really great. In this article, there's a video section where you can watch a video here of Alexis Roush. And I thought she was very well spoken. I thought she was very fair. She's a believer who doesn't mind being somewhere in the middle. And she recognizes that there's a lot of value to the reasons why those who leave do in fact leave. But graphic designer Alexis Roush, still active in the church, hides her religious devotion among her ex-LDS or non-LDS arts community friends, not because she's ashamed, but because revealing it would beam a spotlight. Quote, "They don't ask and she doesn't tell," unquote. Such an emotional defense for the believer in a world that's already primed every interaction. And I just want to note, believers are hurt by those of us on this side of things, those of us who leave. Anytime there's a conversation where we're talking about our leaving or what it was that led to it, people on the believing side they feel a lot of hurt by that. In the same way that we feel hurt when it feels like our relationships are minimized because we no longer are in the faith, or that people come up with the terms that the church has taught them about us being lazy or being less than, being the chaff among the wheat or the tares among the wheat. There's a lot of tension in this relationship. And rather than just family and friends loving each other for that relationship, this religion finds its way in on both sides. So I just want to note that. So family over religion, the divide isn't occurring in the Methodist Church. It's not happening in the Baptist faith or other Protestant churches. It's a deeper religious tactic that often happens in unhealthy systems where the one who leaves experiences harm and deception, where the system labels leaving as betrayal and teaches members to choose faith over fractured family ties, and where the system, often subtly and sometimes overtly, cast leavers as lesser, broken, or even as the enemy. That's a power dynamic that you can find in any group or tradition bent on communal purity and loyalty over love. It doesn't only hurt on Sundays, but rather it warps caring into conditioning, curiosity into suspicion, and leaving into exile. It translates into the bitterness that those who stay, continuing in belief, feel from us who left. And those of us who lived the dark night of the soul, the harm goes beyond lost doctrine. And it's the lost relationships, the invisible scars, and the sheer loneliness that no church authority ever prepared us for. And so I'll just note, I think the article was very fair. I think it noted that on both sides, both the believer and the person who's left, there is apprehension and hurt. And that and I'm just noting, the article didn't say this, but those last two slides, including this one here, it's my opinion that this doesn't happen in every system. People can come and go in systems and nobody cares. It's secular. If somebody comes to the Rotary or somebody leaves the Rotary, nobody gives two licks. Most of Protestant Christianity handles all of this really well. And so somebody can join the Methodist Church, or they can leave 2 weeks later and go to the Baptist Church, and nobody really cares. Where this seems to care is, as the slide said in the slide before, is in systems that prioritize loyalty. And I want to get the phrase right that it says here. Where the system labels leaving as betrayal and teaches members to choose faith over fractured family ties. And it's in systems that put a lot of responsibility on its believers to choose the faith over family. And also in when it comes to those of us on the outside who have left, who no longer have the best of feelings, I'll use that term, that phrase, the best of feelings with the church, it's because we truly do feel betrayed. We truly do feel lied to. We truly do feel that this thing could have done better by us and it didn't. And I just want to note that this thing in the Salt Lake Tribune, I know it's easy for those who have left to continually think that that they're the only ones who are feeling the hurt. But I just want to note the article, I think, did a great job of explaining the hurt on both sides. Any thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, I remember when Peggy on Facebook was kind of putting it out there, I'm going to be doing an article like this, and so many people were weighing in. So I know that she went to great pains to talk to all kinds of people about their different experiences. And you said something interesting, Bill, when you say other churches, when you say, oh, I've left my church, it doesn't mean what it means when a Mormon or somebody in the LDS church says that. And it's hard to explain to other people. It's just like, I'm just not attending this anymore. Maybe I've moved down the road, or maybe I'm not attending church. This is losing everything. I had a family member that was having quite a struggle from having left, as a teenager, and we kind of arranged therapy. And unfortunately, this person, my family member, got a therapist who said, you're just focusing too much on religion. Get over it. Let's talk about what's really going on. And my family member was like, how do I explain this? That it is this religion, it is these decades of having left as a teenager and living in Utah County and all this. So a lot of people don't get it. I think more people are starting to get it, but a lot of people, this therapist did not get it. I will say that I've seen a lot of articles like this or that are coming out, and I have hope for the future that just shining a spotlight on this scenario, both sides of it, can only, have a positive outcome for people. So that's encouraging, I think.
I liked what you said, Bill, about how there's hurt on both sides, right? Those who remain Mormons but have friends and family who leave, and those who leave, right? I have to make the observation, though, I think this is largely correct, that the hurt on both sides, which does exist on both sides, I think is all caused by the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's caused by the church for those who remain because of the teachings about the family and how these people are now not going to be at the dinner table up there in the celestial kingdom. It's also a sign on you that you didn't do a good enough job as a parent. And according to church teaching, so there's a lot of pain there. And then a lot of those people end up sort of rejecting their children or others who leave the church, the soft shutting that Mormonism is so good at. And that causes the pain and the hurt on the other side. But that shunning is also caused by the church. So I see the pain on both sides being at the church's doorstep.
And I'll say one more thing, which is the healthiest way the church could assist in dissipating that tension. And the easiest way for me to say it is the closest they came was Elder Dieter Uchtdorf's talk, where he said the church has made mistakes. And, sometimes we say the reasons why people leave is this. It's not so simple. But that was, at this point, that's almost a decade ago. Maybe more than a decade ago.
I think it is, actually.
And it was obvious that Elder Uchtdorf's tone got him on some level put back into the 12. And so the church, John DeLynn mentioned a few weeks ago on some content we created that he sat down with Elder Holland, and Elder Holland told him that we just can't give these kinds of talks yet. Church isn't ready for them. Well, the fact is, it's the leaders who aren't ready for it. And it's sad that we can't have talks every general conference where church leaders admit they've been dishonest and they've lied in the past, that they've hidden church history, that they've required things at the hands of believers that were not fair to ask, and that people who left truly do feel betrayed by the way the history was told and by the way that they were manipulated to carry out certain behaviors, and that we ought to honor those who leave as having done the hard thing. And I know you can say that tactfully. You don't have to say it like that. That's not going to be good for the numbers in the pews. But you can give talks like what Elder Uchtdorf did, and you get everybody in the church on some level to go, yeah, there's some truth to that, and I can be a little kinder, and I can be a little more empathetic to how hard of a struggle it is for this stuff not adding up exactly.
So I looked it up. Believe it or not, that was almost 12 years ago.
Mm,
October 2013.
yeah. Too bad.
Yes. So the next story is, I think I see a temple down there, and a temple means it's Rebecca Biblioteca's story.
It is. And I remember that talk from 2013. And boy, we all had such high hopes for Elder Uchtdorf until
We were so naive.
the inevitable happened. We should have seen it coming, but it didn't. So, all right. Yes, let's dive into a little bit of temple news. The last couple of weeks have been pretty eventful. We have the Heber Valley, Utah temple construction has started. I mean, you guys have been following this along with us for the last 2 years, back and forth, dark skies, in and out of court. And finally, they have actually always been able to start for the last 2 years, but there have been, legal maneuvering. So now they've decided they feel like they're pretty much in the clear, and they are going to start building. Here we go in Heber. It says nearly 3 years after its groundbreaking, 3 years. Construction work on the Heber Valley Temple is now underway. The Wasatch County had issued a permit 2 years ago, like I just said, but because of all the lawsuits and the things going on, they didn't start building, but now they feel pretty confident. And there's a picture of the lovely field where the temple, which you can see below that, is going to go. But there are some interesting issues around this construction. I had someone who lives in Heber send me this picture and say, hey, construction has started. So I don't think
that's
we have
how
to
high
ask.
the temple spire is going to be.
And that's exactly right. And I think that's what that person is showing. That is a representation to scale of the temple spire. Now, there are some strong feelings in Heber, and having followed it for 2 years, I absolutely understand why. But you can see construction moving in. There's a porta potty. That's always the first sign, right? They're going to get going, and some ground is being moved. But it's not just the ground, right? This is going to get really interesting. So at the same time this is happening, the opponents from that lawsuit, they asked the court for an emergency stop to the construction because they're appealing to the Supreme Court of Utah. I think we talked about this the last time we were on the newscast. So they're saying, hey, you're still premature. We still are going to be in front of the Supreme Court. This is exactly what happened in Cody, if you remember, and the church just sped in and started building. And then the Supreme Court in Wyoming did rule, go ahead. So I think the church is assuming that this is going to happen too. It says the residents group intends to appeal the judge's decision. That was the judge that said, go ahead, you can build, to the Utah Supreme Court, challenging the legality of the Legislative Development Agreement, the LDA, used to approve the temple project.
And this is the one where the issue had to do with the actual land for the temple being on county land, but like surrounded by the city.
Yeah, and they just swept it through the county commission. Several of them were actually standing next to President Nelson with a golden shovel at the groundbreaking, and they basically overturned everything as far as dark skies and building size that had been there for 20 years. They overturned it like that. And of course, a lot of people feel you would not have done that for any other kind of development but the LDS church. So, and I think you guys saw, I show it quite often, one of the residents trying to talk to the county, and they're up there saying, we're not the Church of Latter-day. What are we? They completely aligned themselves with the church. So yeah, it's an interesting scenario, but the church is building. Now, here's what is very interesting. Let us talk about water, right? We haven't talked about this for a couple years, but now that they're starting to build, this is back in the spotlight again. So let's see, here we go. Okay. The church begins work at Heber Valley, Utah temple site as opponents appeal to the Utah Supreme Court. And if you look at this article right here, this is in the Deseret News. It says the work soon will turn to removing what a groundwater study said could be as much as 1 million gallons of water or more. That sounds like a lot, right?
That's a lot of water, 1 million gallons.
It sounds like a lot.
This is having a drought down there, by the way.
Yeah, I know. We're going to kind of talk about that. So 1 million gallons is what the Deseret News last week said is going to be removed. Okay. Now let's look at this article. This is from the KPCW, and it says Heber Valley Temple construction begins. It says work will include extensive dewatering. That's removing water from the ground. A 2023 groundwater study estimated that the church would need to pump up to 1 million gallons a day for several weeks to keep the site dry enough for construction. So
1 million gallons a day?
for several weeks. So that is different from what the Deseret News said. They just made it sound like up to 1 million gallons overall.
They've
This
got
article,
a freaking river going under this temple?
yeah, well, groundwater, it's there. And I've looked at all these studies. This is a really fascinating situation. So this article says, okay, it's going to be a couple weeks of pumping out all of this water during construction. And, that's typical. A lot of sites have to be dewatered. Okay, so let's see what the church's temple site says about what's going to happen. It says significant dewatering of the site will be necessary to keep the ground dry enough for construction. It is estimated that up to 1 million gallons of water a day will need to be pumped for several weeks. I mean, that sounds like a lot, but only several weeks. And yeah, several weeks. Okay, so here's where it gets weird. This is all current. This all came out within the last couple weeks. Let's tell the truth about water, and let's go back 2 years, right? This is when I started following it on Mormonish. Okay, so here is an article from 2023, right? Again, from the KPCW. And it talks about a woman who is concerned by the studies that she's seen, the information that she's been getting about how much water is going to be taken out of the ground. She says, our concern is all of that's going into the creek, it's going downstream into the Provo River, and then eventually down the canyon. So it's not benefiting the Heber Valley. So in 2023, people are looking at these studies, they're paying attention, and they're kind of raising the alarm. But let's talk about how much water actually is going to be moved. And again, this is from the 2023 article. It seems like they had amnesia almost when they started putting out the information 2 years later. Here it says, I know from the schematics, there's going to be 20 wells that go down 40 feet. And it talks about how many gallons per day, per minute. And it talks about the different phases of watering. And just to kind of break it down, for about 6 to 8 weeks, there is going to be 1 million gallons a day, right? A day. That's not what it said in the Deseret News. After that, that'll slow down a little bit, maybe to 500,000 gallons. But what they're not talking about is that forever on this site, it's going to be up to 300,000 gallons a day forever. None of the articles that came out in the last couple of weeks have mentioned that. And we're going to talk to an engineer, a friend of mine. I'm going to read some things that say, maybe this isn't as drastic as it sounds, but I still think that they should be upfront about what they're saying, the amount of water that is going to be removed. So I made this little meme where it says, and this is from the groundbreaking, and then we're going to pump out this much water from the ground, but you don't need to worry about it. All you need is the living water of Christ. So that's my dewatering meme. So, okay.
This seems kind of wasteful.
Yeah, it seems like a lot more than they're talking about, right? You saw those 3 articles. They're saying up to, or maybe a little more. None of them mentioned in 2025 that it goes on forever, right? Back in 2023, we knew this, right? So let's show this clip really quick. This is from Mormonish when we first got involved with Heber. We were first involved with Cody, and then Heber contacted us and said, hey, we have a situation too. Do you guys think you could cover this? Because no news outlet will talk to us. So you're going to see 2 residents that know a lot about the water. And I'm just going to show that back in 2023, exactly a year from yesterday is when this podcast came out, we were already talking about the water.
90 million gallons of water?
That appears correct. So they've done a dewatering study through one of the engineering firms they've hired, and they're going to put in 20 pumps around the property to take water off the lot. If you read that engineering study, they need to dig down roughly 42 feet to build the basement or foundation for the size of the temple. The problem is 10 feet down, they hit water. So roughly 30, 32 feet of water has to disappear from that foundation and be pumped off site, which is problem number 1. It's a class 1 aquifer, which is where we get our drinking water from. And based on the analysis, it's 90 million gallons of water that has to be pumped off to put the foundation in.
Is that a year, a month? What?
That's over the course of the year based on the estimates in the engineering study.
Okay.
So if you look at the low end, because again, it is an estimate, it's 65 million gallons. If you look at the high end, it could be as much as 125 million gallons. But again, the estimate in the report says about 90 million gallons needs to be pumped off. Simply to put
And
the
is
structure.
this continuing? Will they have to continue to pump every year, keep the pumps running? If the temple's built there, they'll have to continue to siphon the water off.
Correct. And that's because it's in a water aquifer where all the water runs through the valley. So again,
Okay,
it's
that's
coming
enough.
from the
So
Jordan
I'm
Valley,
just showing that Mormonish, we were
ground,
talking to the residents about this watering problem 2 years ago. And the residents kept trying to go to the county council and go to some people saying, is there some oversight just so we can understand, is this okay?
Who on
And
earth gave them the permit to build there?
the county who stood next to President Nelson with a golden shovel. This is what I'm trying to say. And the reason, here's a planned Heber Valley temple may need to pump out 1 million gallons of groundwater daily, right? That even the Tribune understood back then. Today, everybody seems to have lost that memory. Now, it's because of the baptismal font, right? That is underground. And if it were on a slab or something, they would not have to continue to dewater every single day for that baptismal font. So, and it's very expensive to continue to do that. So the citizens back then in 2023, once they kind of understood what was going on, they were concerned. So the church put out some information, kind of a fact about, what's going on. The question was, the church will pump away millions of gallons of groundwater a day, and this valuable resource will be lost to the citizens of Wasatch County. And their answer was just to assure them basically that the stream where they are pumping it can handle the water. That was the answer. So, that wasn't really the question.
Yeah, they didn't answer the question, did they?
They didn't answer the question, but they reassured everybody that the stream can more than handle it. Okay. So I wrote a letter to the Deseret News. I don't do that very often, but once I saw their article where they said we're going to pump out 1 million gallons or more, and I thought that is not accurate. So I'm going to read my letter. I don't think they published it, but I wrote it, so I'll read it. So I said, this is not a truthful representation by the Deseret News. As part of the Heber Valley Temple construction, 1 million gallons of water a day will be pumped out of the ground for a month or more. That's the size of almost 2 Olympic swimming pools a day. I know it's very hard for us to visualize, but that's, maybe you can wrap your brain around that. After a month, this amount will be reduced to the size of 1 Olympic swimming pool a day through construction, right? Dewater the ground. Then going forward forever, they will dewater the site using a gravity method. That's just kind of natural water flowing out. And that'll be up to 125,000 gallons. Additionally, they'll have to have those pumps because of the below ground baptismal font. And that can be 150 gallons a minute. So the total volume of water per day pumped out, adding those two methods together, will be up to 300,000. This is about half the size of an Olympic pool every day going forward forever and ever. Amen. And then the water is going to go into a stream where it could evaporate, could be used by plants and animals, or it could just run downstream to other areas. Okay. So any thoughts on that before I go to the next part?
I'm guessing Heber has a lot of other water supplies.
Yeah, I think so. And again, I have a picture of a drought here, because to a layman, when I read this, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're dewatering the ground. We're in the middle of a drought. So I decided that I better talk to my friend. Believe it or not, I have a friend who is a water resource engineer who has designed dewatering systems for large scale construction projects. Now, I'm not going to read through each of these because that would take too much time, but I will flip through them so you guys can pause on them. But his answer is sort of, it's kind of typical, for what you would do with a construction project. His idea was sort of, if they put it on a slab, they would not have to continually pump the water away. Some of the questions that he addressed, he kind of saw that were out there, is the amount of water is excessive. Again, he's saying, he's seen this before. The LDS Church has plenty of money to do this. Should they do it? I don't know, but they can do it, right? And apparently they've, talked to all the people, got all the permits, and so I guess they can do it. Another question he wanted to address is the groundwater table will not recover. He says it's the top 30 feet of water table. Since the water table was encountered 15 feet below the ground, the water table will likely recover, though not fully due to the ongoing pumping. So it is it is going to impact the groundwater and the area. Any impacts will likely to be in limited parcels close to the site, like a shallow well. So some residents there could see, their wells dry up, I guess. So, but again, my friend is like, they do this, people do this. What do they plan to do with the water? That's a big question because we're in the middle of a drought. And he says they plan to discharge the water into Lake Creek that runs right next to the site. I've seen it, and it's going to go down the hill and it'll eventually end up in Deer Creek Reservoir, which if the water were underground, it would also end up in Deer Creek Reservoir. However, putting the water out into the stream, you can have some evaporation, but not that big of a deal. So I'm kind of just putting this out there. If anybody,
Is that the reservoir?
yeah, that's Deer Creek. Yeah, absolutely
The
beautiful.
water gets to the same place anyway.
It does, but it's not natural the way it happens, if that makes sense. It's dumped into a stream and, goes down the hill, goes somewhere else. So I guess I'm just putting this out there if anybody else wants to look into this, because it's kind of an interesting scenario. But I did have, a different perspective once I talked to my friend who was the engineer, but I also understand the perspective of the people who live in Heber, especially people right around there. All that pumping, all that water moving, the houses around it. I mean, do they need flood insurance? What exactly is going to happen? So if anybody else wants to look into water, or that's something that you are involved in professionally, go ahead. But the main thing that I wanted to discuss here is just the fact that it seems like the articles that are coming out are not mentioning pumping in perpetuity, if we can call it that. It is always going to be
I thought that's
dewatered.
what we did in the Celestial Kingdom.
I think it is. Yikes. Dewatered to the tune of half an Olympic-sized pool. So, okay, that's Heber. Let's quickly just talk about Fairview really fast here. The Fairview Temple, they voted to finalize the LDS temple, but the lawsuit could stall construction. Last Tuesday, the city council voted 5-0 and said, okay, you can go ahead and apply for your construction permits. I put up the 3 different versions of the temple there. I think my favorite is a little schematic there drawn on a napkin. That was from mediation. But the town council did vote.
It's like it's glowing at the top.
Yeah, it's something. It has something going on there. So what does this vote mean, right? This happened Tuesday. It means that they've approved the final plat, right? The paperwork now allows the temple to go ahead and apply for its construction permits. But Mark Johnson, who is the attorney for Fairview United, told this particular reporter that if construction permits are filed, they will immediately ask a judge for a temporary restraining order, and that would keep the project on hold until the lawsuit is resolved. And so both sides are going to court. If you remember, the issue is, did they need a supermajority? Yeah, remember all that. And the lawsuit is still ongoing and they're still going to go to court. So we will continue watching. So for now, there's the site. Whether they will start, if they put that first shovel in, we don't know what's going to happen in court. Now, here's one thing I did want to just play. And I'm sorry, Bill, I forgot I had a second video here. This is Mayor John Hubbard. And as they voted, he said, I would like to make a statement. And I think this statement sums up a lot about Fairview. So again, I apologize, Bill. I totally forgot that I had this video. So this is Mayor John as they're casting that 5-0 vote to approve the plat for the temple.
Excuse me, any other discussion? I would like to go in and make the motion, and I want to read a statement. And I would like to add that to the motion. Clark, may I add this to the motion? You've read it previously. Or do I need to make that separate?
Sure, you can make any motion that you desire.
Okay. Here's my motion. The Fairview Temple should be a symbol of love and community, a place where neighbors come together in mutual respect. Instead, the Fairview Temple has become a symbol of division, bullying, and a refusal to be good neighbors. When the conditional use was approved, the council inadvertently left out the removal of 2 parking lot lights on the north side of the property. These lights shine directly into the homes of families living on Forest Oaks. The town reached out and asked the LDS Church if they would, out of the kindness and consideration for the people living next door, their neighbors, take the poles down. The church answered no. With the approved CUP, The LDS church has every legal right to keep those lights, just as they have every legal right to build a 120-foot steeple. But having the legal right doesn't make it the right thing to do. A true neighbor doesn't ask, what can I get away with? A true neighbor asks, how can I live in harmony with the people around me? That's what makes this process for me so disappointing. Instead of being remembered as a place of peace and community, the Fairview Temple, called the House of the Lord by members of the LDS Church, is at risk of being remembered as a place where rights are valued more than relationships, and where being a good neighbor was pushed aside. And included in that motion, I would like to make a motion.
Yep, and that's it. And then they reluctantly voted. They had to vote 5-0. There were some members that were left. So, and to me, that's just really heartbreaking. But if you pull up my last slide there, I thought it was really funny. Here we have President Nelson, right? Here is what he said as he, had his opinion piece in the Times, where he says, if more people were peacemakers, building bridges of understanding, and it's funny because Mayor John actually, I sent the article to him and he highlighted this exact paragraph and kind of went, So there you go. That's Fairview. To me, that speech was heartbreaking.
I have never seen the church or President Nelson act in a more pharisaical manner than in this case.
Yep.
The church is such a disappointment. It continues to disappoint me. It should disappoint all of its members. When there are 2 light posts that are probably at the extremity of the property, they're going into somebody's window. You don't have to have the light post, guys. This is the time. This is the moment. This is when you say, absolutely, we'll do something else. Let's work this out together. So then that's what the newsroom can release. That's what the mayor can be talking about. And that's what can start healing these wounds that have been created by the church in Fairview. But no, they're going to continue to be dicks about it.
Yep, to the last minute.
Biggest dickus.
Any thoughts, Bill? And then that's my end to the news on temples.
The only thing I want to say is just back to the water story. We covered the water levels in Utah a couple of weeks ago.
That's right.
And I just want to put up on the screen just so people can get a feel for the situation, not only in Utah, but Nevada. This goes up to the Colorado, where the Colorado River feeds a lot of these reservoirs and whatnot. But let me take this down. I'll put this up. This is the Hoover Dam. This is Lake Mead. And this is a large portion of water that goes out to the surrounding states. Mm-hmm. What you see is the white rock. That line is where the water level used to be. And this is huge. This isn't a small area. What you're seeing, if you can picture it, a person would be so small on this. They would be so small compared to this image. They could probably walk along whatever that flotation barrier is down there on the water. They could probably walk on that. This is, I don't know what it is, but 150 feet high or something that the water used to be at. And we're running into the same problem in Utah and whatnot. Now, your person said it's not a huge deal. It has a small effect. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just the local neighbors who will have lower water levels, but every little thing makes a difference. And at some point, if the sun keeps shining, the temperatures keep rising, and droughts keep continuing, this is only going to get worse, especially as people from California continue to move into Utah. And so we can keep saying it's not a problem, but at some point we're going to have a major water crisis in the state of Utah because all the data points that we're heading there.
Yeah. And I think that's what some of the residents are saying about the study is just that, do we know really? I mean, this is a drought like we've never seen, and it looks like it's a 25-year drought. Do you want to mess with the groundwater? Even if it seems like it's okay, do you really want to mess with it? So I hope that other people look into that scenario. I think everybody wants more answers as they're starting to install those 20 pumps and 1 million gallons a day coming out.
Are you folks in Utah, are you under any kind of rationing with regard to water?
Watering, yeah.
Not like Vegas. So like
Yeah, not like
Nevada has rules where all grass should like be artificial. You can't really water lawns. There's lots of regulations on that. In Utah, there isn't much, but I just showed when I did that story a couple of weeks ago, there was something about Cedar City where they were beginning to implement some water use regulations.
Mhm.
And I think Utah being affected by the religion in the state sort of thinks the second coming will happen and Jesus will save everything and we don't need to worry. So there's a little less responsible, forward-thinking action happening. But I think it has begun. Those kind of cities in Utah have begun to talk about doing that sort of thing.
Look, I'm not here to criticize or talk politics. It just seems that, by the way, I was out there for the first time at Hoover Dam, and I saw exactly what you're talking about, that photograph.
It's
and Randy
huge.
pointed-
It's way bigger to your eye, like in real life, than what a picture could show.
This is just the end of Lake Mead. I mean, it goes around the corner. It's huge. It's like the biggest lake. Isn't it the biggest lake in the United States, other than the Great Lakes?
I think so.
It's massive, massive. And I just would think that somebody would have started instituting some kind of regulations before it got that far down, because when it gets all the way down, you're at DEFCON 1.
It's to the point where things on the bottom are starting to show through the surface. So they're beginning to go like, oh, remember that thing that happened 50 years ago? There's the top of it.
There it is.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good.
No.
All right. Well, we'll leave these difficult issues in the capable hands of the government. And I'll go on to my next story. Mormon sex abuse hotline fails again. I am really, really upset about this story. And the more I listened to it, the more I found out about it, the more upset I was. And this was one of the reasons, the other reason I called John DeLynn, because this happened. I think he sort of stumbled into this when he was interviewing this guy named Riley Davis, who was a seminary teacher who apparently quit recently within the past week of this recording. And Riley Davis starts talking about when, as a seminary teacher, he saw a kid who talked to him and he saw all the red flags of abuse that's going on in her home. And his natural training, because he had been a regular school teacher before becoming a seminary teacher, he knows he's a mandatory reporter, but he goes to his materials. He knows the first thing, and he's got to call that damn hotline, the church hotline, which he calls, says what's going on, and the person tells him not to report. The person tells him not to report. The lawyer at the end of the line told him not to report it. He's not even a bishop. He's not a stake president. There could not even be the remotest hint of clergy penitent privilege involved here. And yet a lawyer is telling him not to report. And so we get a few more details. I'm just furious about this. This happened 3 years ago. Okay. And the reason I'm curious about it is because you know that Bisbee, Arizona case, the Adams case, where the bishops, plural in sequence, called the hotline and were told not to report, even though Arizona law gave them the option of reporting. They were lied to. They were lied to by those disgusting, disgraceful attorneys like Curtin McConkie who are manning this hotline. They were lied to. These guys should be disbarred. And then they should be put in prison for telling people not to report abuse, because they don't give a damn about their members. All they care about is their bottom line. Okay, I'm sorry. That's my soapbox. We'll see. I was going to say all that at the end, but I got on a roll. Let's look at this, okay? This is what it looks like over there at Mormon Stories. This is a 4 hours and 38-minute interview with Riley Davis. Resigned as a CES instructor last week is the name of it. And then John DeLynn, when he saw what he had, he excerpted this other piece, which is about 46 minutes long as part of that 4.5-hour interview. But this is where he tells the story. We're just going to play the first 7 minutes and 21 seconds. That's the clip of this 46-minute video. And then I'll flesh it out from there. Bill, can you put this at 1.5 speed? I think you can. Let me know if you can. Yes, you can. Thank you. And I do that because there's people who've already seen this. You can understand it quite easily at 1.5 speed, at least I can. And I encourage you to go to Mormon Stories and watch the rest of this.
The other big blow to me was I knew the complicated past history. I did not know our history with abuse reporting in the church.
How'd you start learning about that?
Well, part of it was firsthand in my experiences with Kurt and McConkie. And then,
Do you want to talk about that?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I had an incident in my class where it seems like sometimes management or supervisors make it seem like the most effective seminary teachers are the ones that can make students open up and be most vulnerable in class, which can be really problematic. You end up discussing a lot of things in a seminary class. And I remember, I don't know what it was, but we were sharing hard things that Christ has helped us overcome. And a girl raised her hand and started sharing a situation with her parents that sent up all the red flags, like not okay, something like this needs to be reported. And so like usual, as everyone's leaving the classroom, I'm outside, I pull her aside outside and I'm like, hey, question, thank you for sharing that, right? Have you told anyone else about this? And she said, well, I told my aunt, because what it sounded like was really intense neglect and abuse, right? And so I just let her know, hey, I care about you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad your aunt knows. I am required by law to report anything like this. And the girl actually seemed pretty supportive. She was like, I get it. You can report this.
Wait, are LDS seminary teachers in Utah, do they conceptualize themselves as being mandatory reporters? That would surprise me.
No, I don't think they do on large scale. I did because that's what I was a public educator before.
And they are school
Yes,
teachers.
absolutely. And
Okay,
actually adults
got
in
it.
Utah, adults, period,
right.
are mandatory reporters.
Okay.
And so
It's not the Mormon church taught you as a seminary teacher.
that was not.
You were a mandatory reporter.
No, in fact,
Yeah.
in fact, I later went into my office and did what I was trained to do, which is to call the church helpline.
Yeah.
So she actually seems pretty supportive. So I just kicked into my educator role. Hey, I've got to report this. Thank you so much. And we're here for you, whatever. And she seemed pretty supportive. Like, yeah, you're fine. Thank you for caring about me and calling it in. And so the thing is, instead of calling DCFS, as all church leaders and employees are programmed to do, I immediately open my phone and it's my first time having to call the abuse hotline because we're taught immediately if anyone says anything like that to call Kurt and McConkie, right? We're not told that it's Kurt and McConkie, it's just the abuse helpline, right? But I call them and I report it and the lawyer on the other side of the line is like, well, thank you so much for calling. It doesn't seem like we'll have I don't think DCFS would have a good enough case to actually open an investigation on this. So don't call it in. And I kind of paused. I was like, so wait, I don't have to call it in? He's like, oh no, don't call it in. And so I'm like, okay. And I hang up and I'm just like dumbfounded. I'm like, what do I do? Because literally from the get-go, from the time she raised her hand, I knew that I had to call this, the educator pre-seminary teacher in me is like, I've got to call this in. It's my responsibility. And then I get told by the helpline, don't. So then I'm frantically searching online, okay, who's a mandatory reporter in Utah? And I find out, yes, I absolutely am. Anything the church wants with priest penitent privilege, this is not some penitent person confessing to me.
Victim.
This is a victim coming to me.
Yeah.
And so any argument for, oh, you don't have to, doesn't apply here. And I'm like, I'm a flipping mandatory reporter and they're telling me not to report. And so I'm just kind of racked with guilt because at this point, this was 3 years ago. I'm still very in the boat. I feel very bad going against church authority. So I pull open our emergency response guide for seminaries and institutes. And I'm like, well, I'll go through and see if there's some sort of leeway for me to report this. But what I find in our under the topic abuse in our emergency response guide, it says to protect confidentiality, never highlighted in red. I didn't highlight that in red, never discuss specific instances or allegations of abuse except as directed by the helpline or legal area counsel. So I'm like, I literally can never, this is supposed to die with me right here. This girl said she's in this situation that I don't want her to have to keep enduring. And then it goes on to say, and it even seems like our policy used to kind of teach teachers to prevent reporting if possible. It says, when it appears that a student might talk to a teacher about a personal or family involvement with abuse, the teacher should first explain that he or she is required to report allegations of all types. I explained that after she had confessed to me, right? I explained, hey, I'm going to have to report this. But this almost seems like preemptively try to get them not to report. If it even seems like they're going to report to you, you need to hop on and say, hey, whoa, I'm required to report this and see if that'll stop it. But then it says teachers should never try to assume the role of bishop or branch president. He did ask me to reach out to her bishop and stuff, but a bishop is not a counselor, is not a social worker, is not qualified or trained to handle something like that. It says, do not discuss or report the matter with anyone unless directed to do so by the helpline or legal counsel. Then at the bottom, it says about how we're not supposed to fill out an incident report or take notes or write anything down about this. So I'm looking at this policy and I'm like, hey, I can't write anything. I can't talk to my supervisor. I can't talk to the counselors down the street. This is supposed to stay with me, according to what Kurt McConkie just told me. I eventually couldn't handle that, just my conscience. And so I eventually go and talk to the school counselor and say, this is what she said to me and everything. And the school counselor just looks at me and says, you're going to report this, right? I'm like, well, I don't know if I technically can. And she's like, you need to report this. She said it to you. And so that empowered me. So I was like, okay.
By the way, what occurs to me on this listening is that if indeed he's not supposed to tell anybody about this or make any written record of it other than call the hotline, then that part of the handbook that says if it looks like they're going to tell you something and report something, then you need to preemptively tell them that anything they say to you, you have to report. That's a lie. You're not going to report anything unless report strictly means only calling the hotline. It doesn't mean calling the cops or DFS, which I think is Department of Family Services in Utah.
I think keeping records is the best thing you can do in these situations to protect you, to protect the victim. If this does go, you should have these conversations written down. I'm deeply disturbed by a faith that built its foundation upon keeping good records, but now in the modern moment, it doesn't want its general authorities keeping journals anymore. It doesn't want anybody handling abuse reports to keep records. It doesn't want records of any. The help hotline, when you call, when they get done with your phone call, they dispose of records so that way they can't get.
They don't. It's a lie. We find out that's a lie. That's a freaking lie. And Bill is right, because they swore in the Bisbee, Arizona, the Adams case. There is a witness who swore that there were no records to give over to the other side in response to their request for production, because all documents, all notes at the other end of the hotline are destroyed at the end of every day. That's a lie. Now, let me show you something here. We're not going to play any more of this. Once again, please go listen to it yourself. It's incredible. I'm just going to synopsize what happens in the next almost 40 minutes in there. So going from the top, though. 1, Curtin McConkie told Riley Davis not to report child abuse to government authorities. Number 2, Riley Davis is not a bishop or a stake president or anybody the church could argue has a clergy penitent privilege with the child reporter. 3, the child is not a perpetrator confessing a sin, but a victim reporting a crime. So again, the clergy penitent privilege does not apply. There was absolutely no basis for this lawyer, this shyster lawyer, to direct him to not contact government authorities about this case. And yet that's what happened. 4, Riley Davis called the hotline again over a different incident a year or more later. Hey, this is new stuff. And spoke to a different attorney. The hotline told him to go ahead and report it to authorities. Police were already involved in this case. We don't know if that had anything to do with the difference in the directive, but he did note that the second time he called, talked to a different lawyer about a different instance, a year and a half later or so. The original incident being 3 years ago. The second time he was told, go ahead and call it in to authorities. Now, number 5, after finishing the second report, Riley Davis asked the hotline attorney, the second lawyer he's talked to, why Riley had been told not to report on the first incident. This second attorney says to him, we always tell people to report, but that he would go back and check the file. Now, if that were true, that they always tell people to report, they wouldn't need to have a freaking hotline, would they? No, just call 911. So that is obviously not correct. Number 6, after reviewing the file, the hotline attorney, the second lawyer, calls Riley, tells Riley, you must be mistaken. We actually told you to report the earlier incident. And Riley's going, what? What? The second attorney saying, it's right here in the file. You were told to report the earlier incident.
Who has a record and who doesn't if that goes to court? We have a file that said we told you to report, and and at the time we told you not to keep a record, so you won't be able to prove or at least even argue that we told you to not report it.
Some lawyer should just be kicked in the nuts over and over again. And yeah, I'm talking to you. Did you want to say something, Rebecca?
No, I just think that obviously when he was told not to report, it caused him great mental distress. He talked it over with the school council. You don't get that wrong. You don't misunderstand something so completely opposite.
No, because he's asking for the clarification in the first phone call.
Yep.
Disgusting.
Number 7, Riley Davis knows this is not true. What does he know is not true? That he was told not to report it because he was initially shocked at the advice to not call authorities, and he took steps to clarify it with the first hotline attorney. 8, Riley Davis asked to see his file. This was a masterstroke, since he is the client of the hotline attorney. And if you're the client, you got a right to see your file. Absolute right to see your file. The second hotline attorney sets up a Zoom call and displays the entire file to Riley Davis. This showed the original email, which for some reason said that Riley Davis had been told to report the first incident. So it appears that, number 1, the abuse hotline is still telling callers to not report child abuse, even to seminary teachers who are mandatory reporters. And in there, he said he was in the junior high school, which I'm guessing means that this might have been 9th graders. This might have been a 9th grade girl. Number 2, the LDS Church lied when they said, as part of their defense in the Bisbee, Arizona case, that they destroy all notes and papers relating to abuse hotline calls at the end of every day. They obviously keep the files if they can retrieve them over a year later. And finally, number 3, the LDS Church, through its lawyers, is changing documents contained in their files to make it say the church said to report when the church said not to report. This is why I think this is so explosive, why it's such a bombshell story, and why it needs to be repeated as often as possible and on as many platforms as possible. And I want to thank John DeLynn for understanding that and giving me his gracious courtesy permission to play that 7-minute and 21-second clip.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
You can ask any question you want.
So, as I understand it, as a seminary teacher, he does have some kind of paperwork that tells him what to do if somebody comes in and talks to him about an issue like that. He's supposed to
Yes.
call the hotline. Okay, he has that. So, my question is, I didn't realize that seminary teachers had instructions like that. What about other leaders just in the ward? Like, say, a young woman's leader. You know, the girls get very close to them, and those girls tell their leaders things. Do they have training? Are they told to call a hotline? Do they have anything like that? A young women's leader, a young men's leader?
I would think that if they're not, the church isn't doing its job.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, you know, when I was in young women, the young women's leader was your, you know, she was somebody you could talk to. And I know several girls that, you know, did share very personal information with young women's leaders. And I just wonder, is there any kind of training or instruction for the adults that these LDS kids interact with every day? Their leaders or Sunday school teachers, you know, shouldn't they know what to do or be told how to handle it?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll bet there are people out there who are watching who do know the answer. Please leave that in the live chat, or if this is a replay, in
I'm
the
just
comments
curious.
below, if you know the answer to that. But given the fact that now we know it's not just bishops, it's not just stake presidents, it's seminary teachers, and why to them? There's no confession going on, okay? And so they're trying to pinpoint the people that young people are most likely to spill the beans to or make a disclosure to. So that's why I say, if they're not given the same training to the ward, young men's leaders and young women's leaders, then they're missing a trick. I expect they have, but that's a great question, Rebecca. Did you want to say anything, Bill?
Just that I'm disgusted. We've run into this so many times now at this point that it's obvious on some level the inner workings of the church wants a safe space for abuse to occur. And I can't make sense of that. As bad as I think the church is, as dishonest as I think they are, as corrupt as I think it is at the top with its leaders, I cannot make sense of why they have their abuse reporting system work in such a way as to make the victims the lowest priority to take care of. I can't figure it out.
Because the other priority is the church. And this is what happens when you allow the attorneys to take over a church. I would think it'd be almost predictable.
Yeah, and you say that as if Curtin and McConkie get to decide, hey, guys, this is what we do here. But on top of that, half of the top 15 are lawyers. Yeah.
Oniswa qui malipons. And the next story is that's French. It's about the only French I know. I think it's the motto for the Order of the Garter. That's a big deal in legal circles. That's why I was never a part of it, but I know the slogan, Honi soit qui mal y pense, let he who speaks evil of it be accursed. Is this yours, Rebecca, this next story? Or Bill?
This
Bill.
is just a really quick blip. This was in the Deseret News, I believe. And this is a first edition of the Book of Mormon, sells for $240,000 at auction. This story is nothing compared to the last story, but I did see this in passing and just wanted to note, because working at the pawn shop at Family Pawn in Hurricane, Utah for just under a decade, and we had a first edition of the Book of Mormon. We had a second edition, which is 1837, in 1837, Kirtland, Ohio, I think.
So.
Second edition of the Book of Mormon. In the first edition, they had a copy of that too. And the owners of Family Pawn, friends of mine, they sold the first edition, sold the second edition. I don't remember what they sold for, but it was nothing near this price for that first edition. And Reed Moon, who is a Mormon artifact collector, and he's the gentleman who collects on behalf of Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck wants to accrue certain artifacts, and he sends Reed Moon out to do the collecting of the artifacts for him. But this price, I mean, the Book of Mormon first edition is steadily going up, and it is interesting. Every once in a while, every 5 to 7 years or so, somebody wants to sell one of these, and the price just keeps skyrocketing. Reed Moon says he can see the day where sometime in the next decade, one sells for $1 million.
Really?
Book of Mormon. Yes. That's what Reed Moon says. I find that hard to believe, but again, I don't remember the amount, but whatever it was under 100,000, and it's already now $250,000. And the one we had was in very good shape.
Wow.
So
that's almost as good as having an Amazing Fantasy number 15.
Yeah, almost as good. So just a note, if in your grandmother or grandfather's attic happens to be laying around a first edition of the Book of Mormon, you're at least $250,000 at this point.
Mm.
Anyway, there's just a one little page blip. Anything from you guys? Otherwise, we can move on.
I just think Mormon memorabilia is only going to go up in price, like you said. They're hot ticket items, right? Whether it's something like a Book of Mormon or a stone from Adam's altar at the Adamandiaman site, anything you can get your hands on to touch church history, I think.
And the next story, is this going to be you, Rebecca?
Yes, this is kind of a follow-up. I don't know. Do you guys remember when I reported several times on what happened and I finally learned to pronounce it, Lesotho. I've been saying it wrong the whole time, and I apologize to everyone.
I didn't want to correct you.
Finally, I know you knew how to pronounce it. Yeah, but we've been talking about this extraordinarily tragic event that happened almost 3 months ago, where there was a group of young women going to a conference with their leaders, branch president, his wife. It was a horrible minibus crash with 3 cars, fiery crash, and 6 young women lost their lives. The branch president, his wife died, 2 other leaders. I mean, it was just horrific. I think it's the greatest loss of life in the LDS church in the modern age. And the reason that we wanted to obviously express our condolences to everybody, but we were also really surprised by the non-response from Salt Lake proper. Now, the area presidency there in South Africa, they put out a statement. The huge funeral was attended by 3,000 people. There were 2 funerals, and a prime minister showed up, all these dignitaries. A 70 from the area came in Africa. But we were just really surprised that there was no official statement from Salt Lake. Elder Rasband on his more personal social media said he and his wife were saddened by this, but there was no kind of statement that we could find anywhere or any authority from Salt Lake that came to preside over any of these funerals or anything. So suddenly, I see the news just yesterday, and it looks like some leaders, some dignitaries from Salt Lake have made the trip to the area to talk to the branch. These were all members from the same branch. Again, just horrific and so sad. But who they sent are the primary and Relief Society leaders minister to the grieving now I can't even pronounce it again, Lesotho. Yes. Lesotho. So they sent the General Relief Society president and General Primary president, and a counselor in the General Relief Society presidencies. So really interesting. And they took with them a card. This looks like it's kind of a picture of the card, like they had set it on a table or something. It almost doesn't make any sense to me, but it actually has a message from President Nelson on this card that they gave to some of the branch members. And so finally we're getting an actual message, from somebody in Salt Lake delivered by some top leadership. And the message says, in that terrible accident in June, your family members and friends, who were many of our choicest church members in Lesotho, perished on their way to a young women's activity. So he states what happens back to the people that it happened to.
Yeah.
Then he says, I express my love to each of you, dear family members and friends. Our prayers continue to be with you and your loved ones. So
That's it.
That's it. That's the message. Yeah, from President Nelson. And then, of course, the women from the presidencies, they also included a message, which was a little more heartfelt. But the odd thing, I think, is this picture on the card of all the female leadership of the church. And I don't know if they're thinking, okay, these were young women that died, that passed away in this accident, although they sent the Relief Society and the primary leaders, not the young women's presidency. So I'm not sure. I'm glad they did send somebody. And I know that the church has been providing for these families, helping these families. But it just makes me feel like there's just something that's stopping them from actually, making statements, sending out apostles. I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I a conspiracy theorist?
My first thought is maybe because the brethren weren't doing anything, maybe the women's organizations got together and said, let us do something. Let us at least try to reach out and send our condolences. And
3 months later.
Yeah, but maybe because in this church, when you're a woman, you have to sort of wait to see what the men will do first. And if they didn't take any action at all, maybe these women got together. That's the only way I can make sense of it. Anyway.
I don't know. RFM, any thoughts?
No. They say better late than never.
No.
I'm not sure that's always true.
Well, and then a very
when what you do late is this, which seems so perfunctory.
Right. And I will say they did post pictures, photo ops, because, in addition to the young women who lost their lives, young women were burned and hospitalized, and they are still recovering. So there were some pictures with the leaders and these young women that are recovering. And a jaded person I talked to said, could it be less disturbing photo ops? You know what I mean? Let everybody kind of get their acts together. I don't know. They did say that the young women had their scriptures burnt up in the accident. And so as a gift, they gave the young women new scriptures. That was part of what they brought in addition to this card.
If they hadn't been burned up, it would have been a miracle.
That's true. That would have been a miracle. So anyway, I'm glad they did something. I'm glad that they're out there. And as I said, all along, the church has been giving aid. They just haven't been forward facing, saying any actual statements.
This is what Aaron Cherinian has brought us.
Could be he's behind all of it. I don't know.
You wouldn't think you need an Aaron Cherinian to know. I mean, geez.
It's a huge
President
deal.
Nelson, read your own freaking editorial from Time, okay?
Exactly.
I don't know. It just seems that they are being rather neglectful of the area of the church that they're leaning on for any kind of numbers.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's a good strategy. Okay, so what is the next story? And is this
this is something I put in talking about neglectful.
Oh, we talked about this Friday. That's right. This was a great thing.
We talked about this Friday, Mormonism After Dark. This happened just a couple of days ago. This was Friday morning. Started at 9 a.m. It ran, part of it ran through Saturday. The church put out a conference. You could watch it live stream on the church's website. Church, and look at the label here, Deseret News again. Church History Conference discusses making peace with challenging questions. These are Keith Erickson, works for the church history department or some part of its church history. You've got several panel discussions. going on. And the one thing they never did was actually get into answering any questions on church history. The entire conference, as far as I saw, was about, don't worry about the actual problems in the history. God's grace covers that. You'll figure it out on the other side.
Mhm.
Don't worry about the leaders making mistakes. Grace covers them too. Just have faith. And that was pretty much the gist of it. So
The Mormon church is finding out what a handy doctrine grace can be.
the church wants to tackle church history without ever tackling church history, because in the church, from a faithful point of view, that's the only way you can tackle church history. Anyway, I'm happy to get your thoughts, but I just wanted the audience to be aware that this happened. If you want to hear some of the great sound bites from this and not have to watch the whole thing yourself, tune into Mormonism After Dark. That happened last Friday. You can find that on our YouTube channel.
I hadn't seen this picture before, but I think all three of those men's footwear is a crime against humanity.
Yeah.
I will say the first rule of church history is don't talk about church history.
Yeah.
You're right. And they managed to do that for a year, for a day and a half.
Yeah. And there's
In a
so many
conference about
articles
church
about the
history.
conference. There's so many articles about the conference where they continue to not talk about church history. I mean, there are many different things you can look up. It is pretty fascinating.
I said this Friday night. The church gets historians. By the way, this is Kyle McKay who headed this up, head of the church history department, RFM's old mission companion.
Yay.
He is the church general authority church historian.
Mhm.
And he gets all these historians and experts and scholars together, BYU professors, puts them on stage. And all of these experts in history, the one thing they don't want to do is talk about history. And that doesn't make any sense to me at all. If there was a conference about history and you had historians speaking and nobody talked about history, that would be the weirdest thing.
Yes.
No, they
I've
should all
often
go to
thought
the
that with
one.
a church historian being a former missionary companion, mine is a reflected glory.
That's it. And everyone should just go to the John Whitburn Society. I think that's this next week in Missouri. That's where
Do
you're
they
going to
talk about history there?
Oh, yeah.
They do.
Yep. They
You mean there's a
absolutely
church
do.
history society that talks about church history?
There actually is, believe
It's
it or
just
not.
not the one that's affiliated with the church.
That's right.
All right. Are there any more stories? Pray tell. Let me go to this next thing.
I think
Oh
this
no,
last-
LDS garment rationing is a thing. Not water yet, but the garments.
No. Yeah, no, this is a big deal. And I was so happy. You know, our good friend Martine, she always is able to get things early that she sends to us. So I was able to read this article a couple days before it was actually out in the Salt Lake Tribune. But basically, garment rationing, right? And we're talking about the new styles. And that would be the tank top, and then a full slip, tank top on top, and then a slip, and then also just a half slip from the waist down. So we all know what's been happening. And I've been reporting nonstop on this, right? You have influencers that are buying, 30, 40 pairs and then marking it up. We've seen all these TikToks. We've seen people, oh, my son, he's, at school in Germany. I'm going to get an order from me and all my aunts and uncles and maybe not uncles. The men's tank top garment, it doesn't seem to be as popular as the women's. People aren't racing to get that,
Are
but
they actually scalping?
they actually are scalping. Yeah. I've
With
been
the
reporting
holy
on that.
garments
Do you
of the
not
Holy
watch my
Priesthood?
segments? Yeah. Do you not watch my segments? Everybody
I
in the
watch
chat
them
knows.
fastidiously.
Yeah. I'm sure you do. You review and then you call me and correct my grammar, and my spelling, and my delivery. I know.
Only when it's essential.
I know, and you're making me a better newscaster. It's great.
think
I
so.
love it. So anyway, we all know that these garments were supposed to be available Q4. I'm sorry, what church has quarters, right? I mean, come on. What religious organization has a Q4? The LDS Church. And that starts in October. So I think a lot of people thought, oh, great, I only have to hold on until October. Remember when I reported about the ward where one person had a pair of the tank top garments and there was a sign-up sheet that you could sign up to borrow it for, like, say, a wedding or a family photo. This is how crazy this is getting. I don't know if everybody's paying attention, but here is the article. Sleeveless LDS garments are getting harder to buy even as the U.S. rollout draws near. Sleeveless U.S. garments are getting hard. Okay, that just repeats that. So what they're basically saying is that they are now going to start restricting how many pairs of these garments that you buy. Because I'm going to, again, state my conspiracy theory. They never meant this to be a worldwide thing. When they first rolled them out, it was simply in hot countries, right? Mostly Africa, Philippines. People just noticed, hey, look what's available to these guys. Then suddenly their church is like, oh yeah, sure. We meant for everybody to have those. And those will be out Q4, right? It just has all the earmarks of, marketing where it rolled out and it wasn't really supposed to be discovered. So this is why.
Yes, I'm glad they're rolling out the sleeveless garments just in time for the warm weather.
That's what I was going to say. You know what? I was really upsetting to everybody. These are not going to probably be out till November. Everybody is going to miss the slutty Halloween costume. It could have been a thing, right? Women wear really skimpy. Anyway, never mind. The girls know what I'm talking about. You could have done it with garments. Halloween, not going to happen. They're not going to show up probably till November now. And they're going to restrict 2 pairs of each style. And I don't know how they're going to do this. Do they check your temple recommend? Do they check your member number? How do they determine how many pairs you've already purchased? I don't know if anybody knows in the chat or has purchased garments recently and knows if they're checking. I'm just trying to figure out how they're going to monitor this. Do you guys have any ideas?
Member number.
Member
If your
number.
kids have member numbers, you can start,
Yeah,
using
the
those
last time I bought garments, I had to give a member number. I did not have a current temple recommend,
Yeah.
but and what's the restriction? How often can you buy the 2 pairs? Is this forever? Oh, somebody scissors, exactly. And I'll say that again. Take your scissors, lady, and modify them to match what is on the church distribution website. You're not changing anything that, doesn't belong there. You're just making them look like the approved style. So anyway, that's what's happening. And I think people are going to have to get more and more creative, maybe send their husbands in to get the garments. Could you go from distribution center to distribution center? That's why I think they might check your member number. I don't know how it's going to work in reality, but not really widely available. It sounds like, if even then, till November. So that's kind of sad.
This is like what happened when the church went from 3 hours to 2 hours every Sunday.
Mhm.
And I said it then, I'll say it again now. Never have so many Mormons been so happy to have less
Yep.
Mormonism.
Yeah, it's all about takeaway, isn't it? In
Yeah.
so many different areas. What do you
The
think,
more
Bill?
they take away, the happier the Mormons are.
Leave it up to these guys to try to control things. They're never going to not want to control things. Control is the name of the game in a high demand fundamentalist religion, and wanting to let the people in the, Sahara of Africa be able to get these and then go, oh yeah, but we don't really want the Utah ladies getting cats out of the bag, folks. One way or another, folks are going to figure out how to get them. But you leave it up to the church to try to keep controlling it.
Well, and I think that we heard some kind of statement, RFM, you and I were talking about this, that Jim Bennett, our good friend, had said that people are leaving the church over the tank top garments. And a lot of people
People
kind
are
of
leaving the church over the tank top garments.
maybe it wasn't you that I discussed this with.
They're that conservative.
Yeah, well, no, it's not that. I think it's a combination of different things. And I think for somebody, say my age, if you were still in the church, it might just point out to you how frivolous everything was. What did it even mean? What did I do this all for? All these years.
Because those sleeves,
fighting
those
with
ugly
daughters.
sleeves, which
Yeah.
are really common for guys, those
Yeah.
are real pain for women. And they have been for a long time, haven't they?
Exactly. But I think what men don't understand about the garment and the modesty is all the fights that mothers and daughters would have. All the times you would have to say, oh, I can't be in your wedding because I'd have to wear something, it's a lot. And it has to do with the relationships and modesty and how you feel about, your body and everything. And I think maybe people my age would just go, God, really? What was it all for? It's kind of like if they were to give women the priesthood, I feel, and I've talked to a lot of people who say a lot of people would just leave and say, well, what was that all for? It just points out how, the flip-flop, the back and forth, how transient everything is. Now, for younger women, here's the reason I think they would leave. And I've seen this on TikTok. I posted about this one influencer who she was just grinning and dancing in a denim dress. And she said, I just feel amazing. I feel wonderful. Look at me. I'm so free. There's the key. It's the genie out of the bottle. As soon as you sort of take control more of, your own body and how you can dress, there is a freedom to that. Who knows what you might do next? You might try coffee, right? Or you might eventually just realize, again, what was it all for and why? So I kind of agree with Jim. I think the genie's out of the bottle.
Wow. Thank you for that report, Rebecca. Next story.
Yep, I think we're to the end now. We are just
there's
going
an
to point
announcement.
out. This is
Something
an
big is
announcement.
happening tomorrow. Is that right?
It is. Tomorrow is
Steve
September 9th.
Heinecker is turning 101 years old.
I wanted to point out that this is Steve Heinecker, our good friend from Mormon Book Review's birthday, September 9th. But look what I learned. Did you know that September 9th is the most common birthday in the United States? It's the most common birthday. And that's the birthday that President Nelson has. He is turning 101 tomorrow. But look at all the other birthdays in September, right?
You back up 9 months from September, and people are doing something at a certain time of year, aren't they?
You got New Year's, you got that week in between Christmas and New Year's, you got people off work, it's cold outside, there's nothing else to do. Now I was
Nothing on
confused
TV.
by
That explains
July.
why my birthday is September 9th. How about you, Bill?
Mine's September 14th, so there you go.
Is it really? Are you not on there?
I'm not on there.
No,
But
you
it's
don't even
close.
make the top 10.
It's
No.
close. It's all in there. But then look at the anomaly of July 7th. So I counted back, and that's like maybe like Halloween week. You know, I'm talking about the costumes, right? Something like that. But anyway, very interesting. Tomorrow, President Nelson's birthday, and Steve Heinecker, if you want to wish him a happy birthday. Last year, if you remember, the huge party, right? To turn 100.
Yes.
You guys remember that? There's the picture of him the Deseret News put out where he's batting at balloons. Remember that? And lip readers were trying to figure out what he was saying to Wendy because he was whispering something to her.
It's almost like there's catnip on that balloon.
Yeah, some of the suggestions were not very kind. But anyway, there's been a big buildup to his 101st birthday. He even has his own birthday hashtag, President Nelson Lessons. And I also think hashtag President Nelson 101. And what you're supposed to do is share a favorite lesson that you learned from President Nelson or a favorite quote. So I went ahead and did that, or something not necessarily favorite, but something that impacted your life, right? A lesson or a teaching. So I think the lesson and teaching that impacted my life the most as a post-Mormon was when he said in the Think Celestial talk, don't take counsel from those who don't believe, right? I think that probably impacted a lot of post-Mormons as faithful family members called them up and said, ha, I don't have to believe anything you say ever again. So I don't know if you guys have any favorites or have even thought about it, but everybody was asked to contribute, you know, something that they learned from President Nelson as part of his 101st birthday.
I think it'd be fun if the other leaders of the church did to him what he did to President Monson and create some willy-nilly doctrine, new policy that they'll
It will
throw
make him
away.
go down in infamy.
That they'll throw away in 3.5
Giving
years.
cats the priesthood, but not women.
Yeah,
Yep.
like
Anything can happen. Another funny
I hope
funny
he
thing.
dresses in honor of his 101st birthday. I hope he will dress up as Cruella DeVille.
Ooh, that could be nice. Or, you know, Philadelphia Karen or something. So
Oh my word!
I know that's a whole
Cruella
nother
DeVille
thing.
will live on, but hopefully Philadelphia Karen will fade into the obscurity she
She's already
richly deserves.
already a Halloween costume. But interestingly, something funny happened, and Nemo caught it and posted it about it. Two of the apostles, President Oaks and President, I want to say Razband, both wished President Nelson a happy birthday a week early, which is not necessarily a bad idea when you're turning 101, but it was pretty funny. It was quickly scrubbed from their social media. But speaking of birthdays, I don't know if
They
you
want to
guys
be
know
first to brown nose on this one.
but
Let's
look
just
at
say
this.
President Nelson's
Okay.
at the age where he should not be buying green bananas.
That is probably true. But look at this. Okay. So I said, so you know, when your older, cooler brother has a birthday close to yours and nobody really pays attention to your birthday.
Oh no.
Well, we are paying attention. Elder Quentin L. Cook, whose birthday is today. And
my
I'm
gosh.
guessing that he never gets anything, probably because they're all so busy anticipating President Nelson's birthday. So I just want to say from the Mormon Newscast that, you know, Elder Cook, we recognize your birthday. Happy birthday today. And we're sorry it's so close to President Nelson's.
Wow. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So thank you so much for that report, Rebecca. On the radar, tell us what you're going to be doing tomorrow night on Mormonish.
Oh my goodness. All right. I love to stir the pot. I love controversy. Some of you may have seen a very interesting post that our good friend Rob Lauer put out on different platforms where he talked about Joseph Smith and spiritual marriage and free love that was sort of in the air in the environment in the early 1800s. And can we look at polygamy not so much as a religious institution, but more under the influence of this kind of stuff that was in the in the soup, basically, of that era. So it was a very controversial post. It was pretty much hated by everyone. Post-Mormons went after it. Faithful Mormons went after it. Polygamy deniers went after it. So I said, that's what I want on my podcast. So that's what I want. That's right.
But
So
Rob
no, it
Lauer,
was
I've met him. He looks like such a nice guy. He reminds me of one of the members of the original Sesame Street cast. Was that Bob?
He's amazing. Oh, it does kind of. Yeah, you're right. No, he's amazing, and he knows his stuff. He's incredible. And of course, we had to bring Ganesh on, because on the heels of his new book, he had a lot to add to this. And he actually was one of the few that said, you know what? I have given this some thought. This makes sense. So you're going to have to tune in to find out. But we are going to be talking about the free love era of the early 1800s that a lot of people may not recognize had some influence or some play on what Joseph Smith was doing. So that'll be tomorrow night, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Well, wonderful. Mormonism After Dark on Wednesday, we're going to have a special guest on. Lee Crayenbuell will be talking about, he's coming back for a second time. He was on last year, I think it was.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And he's going to be giving us part 2, but it's going to be an exciting story about Brigham Young. Little known, very little known. This Lee guy, he digs stuff up like crazy. It's amazing. Brigham Young, marriage, what is it called? Hang on a second. Marriage Maker, I think it is. Marriage Maker to the Stars. That's Brigham Young. This is going to be amazing. It's going to be like, what was that show that was on TV, Bill, that was, had that guy on it with the English accent talking about caviar dreams and things?
Oh, Robin Leach.
Yeah, Caviar Dreams and Champagne Wishes.
Robin Leach.
Well, I'm hoping you're going to do it here.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous, caviar dreams, and yeah, I'm just screwing it all up right here, right in front of everyone.
Okay, cut. Okay, take 2 and go.
I'm Robin Leach. This is Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, Caviar Dreams and Champagne Wishes to all.
There it is.
Champagne Wishes. Wonderful. Okay, so this is going to be I think it's going to be a thrill ride. I think it's going to be shocking. I think it's going to be novel. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you'll join us. Wednesday. Then Friday, we got this little thing going called Mormonism After Dark, where
this was
taking the world by storm, isn't it, Bill?
I think I think we're having a fun time, and I think we've found our groove, and the audience seems to love it. The folks join the show. They seem to love to be a part of it. And I see it growing week after week too. So the numbers are slowly going up as well. And I think this is a great time. And I'll just note something else happened this week too, didn't it, RFM?
It did. Last Saturday night, the latest Radio Free Mormon episode went up. Episode 413, if you can believe it, 413. I got to start thinking about what I'm going to do special for episode 420. Think about that.
I have some ideas.
Okay. Can prophets be trusted? Because I'm responding to a talk that was given by this GA, kind of new GA. It's Ahmad Corbett. He is a relatively new General Authority 7. He used to be in the Young Men's Presidency, along with Brad Wilcox, if you remember him. Known to his friends as Bongo. Yes, that's Wilcox. Anyway, he gave this talk, not Wilcox, Corbett, at the Fair Mormon Conference a few weeks ago. They released that talk this past week. And I had to watch it because they got a GA there, which is, of course, the blessing, right, from the church to Fair Mormon to send a GA to speak. And Elder Corbett is trying to make the argument that just because past prophets have really cocked things up, it doesn't mean that you can't trust the current prophets. It's a hard sell to make. I'm not sure he succeeds. I was not persuaded by anything he had to say. And I explain why in this video, which I frame as an open letter to Elder Corbett. That was maybe more than you wanted, but it was a lot of fun. I hope people are enjoying this. And I think it's kind of like something that I do kind of well. I don't know. I just take all these clips from a talk and I slice and dice and I do the Ronco Vegematic thing on Elder Corbett.
Everybody gets a chance every once in a while to be the centerpiece of your deconstruction of their ideas and explain to the audience why they don't make sense.
Some days you're the windshield, some days you're the bug.
That's right.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Please hit that like button, please, and subscribe. You can find that right below this screen, I think. Can't you, Bill, find a subscribe button to hit subscribe?
Should be right down there. Should be right down there below.
You won't miss any of the episodes. And also, If you're watching this, we stream live on 2 channels. One of them is the Mormon Discussions podcast. And if you're watching that here, please like here and then go to Mormonish, which is the other channel where this streams. Hit like there. I know we ask a lot, but we give a lot, damn it. And if you're watching on Mormonish, please hit like there and then come over to Mormon Discussions and hit like here. And if you have a few extra shekels, please donate those only to Mormon Discussions. No donations to Mormonish, okay?
No.
You can hit like and subscribe over there all you want.
Give to
What?
Rebecca Biblioteca and Landon Brophy and help them out.
No, okay, just consult, your conscience and
Let
whatever it
them
is you need to
your
consult to. If you can donate, we appreciate it, and you donate wherever you feel is appropriate, okay? If you want to donate to either one, just put it at radiofreemormon.org. I'm kidding. Mormon Discussions, right, Bill? That's where they should go for this one. And if they want to donate to Rebecca Biblioteca, I'm going to let Rebecca say how to do that.
Oh, yeah. In all of our show notes, we have a link to Donor Box. So it's super easy. Yeah. And we always say, oh my gosh, we're always just overwhelmed. I was over Labor Day. I was on vacation and all of a sudden this donation popped in and I was like, oh my goodness, people are just lovely and amazing and wonderful. And we see what you're donating. And it just, I mean, seriously, it's amazing. But I'm still get goosebumps over those kinds of things. I know I'm a novice, but yeah, no, you guys are awesome.
No.
You're wonderful.
No, I feel the same way too. That's me looking for Klimt, not looking askance at you. Bill, did you want to say something about how people donate at Mormon Discussion?
If you're watching this at Mormon Discussion YouTube channel, you can go into the YouTube description for this video right here, just right down below. If you just click the description button and have it pull up, in there is the donation link. In the future, by the way, Rebecca, one thing I'll do is I'll collect your donation link in the next couple of days. In every episode, I'll just make both of them just be standard.
And I should do that too for my show notes. Yeah, let's cross-pollinate for sure. That's way it's really easy for everybody since we're both Donor Box. Okay, we'll do that for sure.
Okay, well, we'll sign off now so we can get busy cross-pollinating.
Oh, yes.
Thanks everybody for watching. See you next time on the Mormon Newscast. Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.